just very simply, how do you lead in a changing world? Well, I think you have a bias for change. I think you have a very specific sense of purpose, and actually working on a purpose statement I think is increasingly important and really differentiates the leading companies from those that are not leading. Of course, you've got to have a global mindset, and you've heard a lot of conversation around that today. Our company now is growing faster outside the United States than it is in the U.S. The real opportunities for us are in China, in India, in Brazil. And as a global company, the real opportunities for people to work for us is to be part of that global company and have those opportunities. It's what we think will attract young people to work for Marriott today. But on a personal level, I also think you have to be a constant learner. And I think that is really what differentiates the leaders from the followers. The leaders are those people that are open to always learning. Social media enables us so easily now to listen to our customers. For our internal blogs at Marriott, it enables us to listen to our associates. And so that listening and that being a constant learner really, I think, is the important thing for leadership today. Global internet users spend more time on social media. I'm talking about Facebook and a lot of sites that I'd never even heard of than they are on email these days. YouTube is now the number 2 search engine. So not only do you go to Google and search, you go to YouTube and search because you'd rather see the pictures, the video, than actually get the print. Twitter now has, I think it's 15 million users, and they spend an average of half hour a day posting 2 to 3 million tweets, and that number is growing exponentially. Now, what's interesting about this, and as we surveyed this at Marriott, was that social media is actually allowing people to take communication from a one-way street to a two-way street. It's back to being a dialogue, which is what it was before we had newspapers, when people actually had conversations. And the interesting thing is we've also learned that it's not just a young person's game, that 45% of Facebook users are between the ages of 35 and 54. 38% of YouTube users are over age 35. 48% of iPhone users and owners are over 35, and it's global. In fact, that the audience for Facebook, 70% of Facebook users are actually located outside of the United States, so it's not just here in this country. And half of all Twitter users are outside the U.S. Nearly 3 out of 4 internet users go to social networking sites every month. So I didn't know all this. I just had a hunch this is where it was going because I saw what was happening in my users, with my audience, with my users when I came to Marriott 4 years ago. And a lot of this was just brand new. But I said, you got to play in this space because if you don't, you're out of the conversation. They're having a conversation about you and you're not weighing in. So if you don't want to play on YouTube, fine. You'll see lots of postings about bed bugs that people put, and maybe there aren't even bed bugs there, but that's what it looks like. You've got to be part of that conversation. You've got to get there. So I also said, Bill Marriott's got to lead the way on this. He's got to be the one that actually gets us over this comfort level. So I told Bill, you've got a blog. He said, I've got a what? I said, you've got a blog. He said, what's a blog? And I explained to him what a blog was. I said, Bill, you go to 200 hotels a year. You visit, you talk to guests, you talk to associates, you listen to them, you ask them questions. You talk, you tell them wonderful personal stories. That's what a blog is. But it allows you to do it with thousands and thousands of people and thousands of hotels. It amplifies your reach, but it's the same kind of personalized, authentic conversation that you're having now. He said, I'm in. I said, great. So, and I started to explain how he had to get on his computer and we'd create a site for him. And he said, well, I got a problem. I don't use a computer. And I said, well, how do you get your emails? He said, well, my assistant prints them out for me. So I said, well, we can work around this. So I showed him Barack Obama's blog, and Barack was actually just a senator then, was not even talking about running for president, although everybody thought he was an outstanding new talent. I showed him how Barack Obama uses a digital tape recorder to actually record his blog, almost like in the old days, talking into a dictaphone, which is what Bill Marriott had once done, and before they didn't make them anymore. And so he learned how to talk into a little digital tape recorder that's about half the size of a cigarette package. And he is in love with blogging because it connects him with his guests, it connects him with his employees, and it gets him out there. He's gotten all this wonderful publicity of being a CEO who's actually listening and in the conversation with people. And he, blogs at least once or twice a week. A fabulous new thing. That set the tone at Marriott that it was okay to explore and get into this media without necessarily having an ROI in advance as to what the benefit to the company was going to be. So we launched 2 YouTube channels. We aggregated all of our content, getting on Twitter, getting on YouTube, having a number of blogs, a blog for our executive chef, a blog for several of our brands, and we aggregated them onto our own news site called Marriott News Center. And it's right there on Marriott.com. So we now have the ability to tell our news and share our news ourselves without having to convince a reporter to write a story about us. We also aggregate that and synthesize that so that we have better communication with our employees, reaching 150,000 employees around the world through Marriott Headline News, which comes out every evening about 8 o'clock. That's 8 o'clock Eastern time, but it's 8 a.m. when you're waking up in Shanghai, so that we are able to share that information and everybody knows what's going on at Marriott. We're looking now at translating those into multiple languages in the same way that Marriott.com is now in about 5 languages. And so it's been a tremendous way for us to be part of the conversation and to show that we're listening to customers. It's also a great way for us to listen, to what they think we should be doing with our brands. So it's basically being there. Now, in all of this, as you kind of embrace change like this and have a bias for change like this, I also firmly believe, and my experience from my days in journalism, is that you need to have a really good compass through all of it. And I'm a firm believer in companies having a sense of purpose. And this is something that I'm really enjoying working on with Julie Mall here at Marriott. Because it's not just important to have a good culture, it's not just important to sort of set your sights at loyalty and profitability as a company and growth as a company, but it's also really important to tell people what you're really about, and is there a value to your customer, to your associates, beyond the fact that the company's making a lot of money and returning good value to the shareholder. Because without that sense of purpose, they're not going to be the volunteers that somebody mentioned. They're not going to be the people that are rooting for your success and instruments and vehicles for that success. There's an admin named Roy Spence, and he's done lots of fabulous work over the years, and he's kind of a guru in this space. And he says that purpose is a definitive statement of the difference you're trying to make in the marketplace. Purpose trumps everything else. Consumers today are looking for values, not just value. Millennials are not going to buy what you're selling, they're going to buy what you stand for. And increasingly, we realize that there's a convergence between sort of what your brands are and what your corporate reputation is. The sense of you being a company that people want to do business with, a company that they believe is good and that they want to give their business to. I also was in journalism because I thought it was a way to do good. It was sort of that sense of public service that drew me to it. And I also believe truly that business could be a force for good. That if directed properly and with the right leadership and the right sense of purpose, that business could not only do well, but also do good. And ultimately, doing good would help them do better on the financial front. So that's why for Marriott today, social responsibility is a business strategy. It's not something that we put on the side, and our purpose is very directed to that. And increasingly, we're seeing evidence, and this is just very nascent, but we're seeing evidence that corporate responsibility as a business strategy actually is good for that shareholder value. Arthur Little and Company did a survey of 26,000 individuals in 26 countries and found that more consumers form their impression of a company on the basis of their global citizenship, their corporate citizenship practice, than they do over brand reputation or the financials of the company. Harris Interactive did a study for the Reputation Institute and found that better regarded companies attract more investors, and that bids up companies' market value and further improves their reputations. And then the University of Kansas did a study, and they actually found that that list that Fortune magazine does of the most admired companies, which takes into account things like reputation, that most admired list, 1 point on that list will actually translate into $500 million in market value.